How's it going, everybody? Papa Wall Street back with another Edge Lab video. Today we're going to take a look at next week's watch list, and my goal for this video is to keep it in and around 20 to 30 minutes and talk a little bit about my post watch list building process. So today's Sunday, so yesterday on every Saturday I basically do my watch list process. And my watch list creation process starts off with scanning the prior 2 weeks watch lists. And I'm manually scanning with my eyes. I'm looking through the charts. I'm seeing, okay, what didn't trigger this week? And I'm going to put that on next week's watch list. I'm looking for things that maybe broke out or started to build a base from a prior breakout. So I'm going to put that on the list. So I'm really just looking for things that can continue into the next week. Part 2 of my process is scanning. And I run anywhere from like 7 to 10 different scans. We've talked about some of the scan videos, or we've talked about some of the scans in prior videos, I should say. And that's really where I find new ideas. The last part, I do a little social listening. I'll go on to X or Twitter, some other social media platforms, Substack, Instagram, and I just go through, I follow very few people, people that I know are good with technical analysis, they're good with stock picking, and I'm trying to now get that third layer in. What am I missing? What didn't my scans pick up? What hasn't been on my watch list? And guaranteed, I'm going to find a handful of names, maybe 3 to 5 additional names to put onto my watch list. So that's my Saturday process. And now I'm going to show you my Sunday process. And my Sunday process is really taking all of those names that I built for next week. And in this case, it's around 40 names, which is a lot. And I'm going to get that down to maybe 10 to 15 names. Now, I'm not going to pick those 10 to 15 names in this video, but I'm going to show you the process and criteria I use to pick those 10 to 15 names. And maybe it's less, and maybe it's a little more. And then what I'll do is when I have that, 10 to 15 names, tomorrow morning, Monday morning, maybe 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm doing one final scan. And I'm looking at, is there any news, any upgrades, anything that came out that's forcing my name to gap up a little bit, 1% gap up or more, and I'm starting to get a little interested, right? 3%, 5% gap up, I'm definitely interested. I want to know what's going on, what's causing this update, or what's causing this gap up. Was it an upgrade? Was it news? Was there some sort of catalyst? There's something that is causing that name to gap up, and I want to know what it is, and I want to know, can we catch maybe a pullback in the morning or a continuation through the day? All right, so before we continue, just as a friendly reminder, there is the Edge Lab video library. You have your introductory videos. I do the chart breakdown series. I'm starting to build out some Elliott wave analysis, a couple of more specific strategies. I'm doing part 2 of the Fib course right after this video, so that should be out later today. And pre-market analysis, I'll usually do one a week. And then my workshops, which I predated back to March. These are all the workshops that I've done since March. I generally do 2 to 3 a month. I like to do one a week, but life happens sometimes. And, I think it was in June and July, I was traveling a little bit. So actually July had 4, June had 2, and May had 1. April had 2, and then March had. There are other workshops, but they weren't specifically on the teaching side of my workshops. That's why you're not seeing them here. There are more trade reviews or things like that, maybe they make sense to watch, but maybe not. But in any event, this will continue to populate, but let's get back to the task at hand. So before we continue, let's talk about what's on the screen. So your white lines, those are going to be support and resistance. Your purple lines, those are going to be your fib extensions. Your yellow lines, those are going to be fib projections. Your green lines, those are going to be fib retracement. Your dynamic orange line, that's going to be your 5 simple moving average. Your dynamic white line, that's going to be your 21 EMA. This is your volume by price, your volume by time. That's your traditional volume. And then we're looking at RSI and squeeze. There are other indicators that I use, but I don't really use them every day on every chart. I may just use them for confirmation. So, okay, we've gone through the update. Let's go through some of these names. Okay. So first up is Ethereum. We've been talking about Ethereum for a couple of weeks. And you can see that Ethereum has been consolidating in a box, a range box. For those of you technical analyst nerds, this might be called a Darvis box. Look up Nicholas Darvis. He's the trader who came up with this kind of strategy of watching the range boxes and then waiting for the range box breakout. And then you tend to kind of move up, and then you start to create another box, and then you trade within the box. And then again, you can go up, or maybe you could break down and then push back down to the prior box. You could see another Darvis box back here. So this is a pretty, very simple. You define your top end of your resistance. You define the bottom end of your support. Also, what we're seeing here is a high tight flag. Right, so you got a bottom to top, you've got an 86% rise in 1 month, and then you've got a 13, actually it's slightly more than 13. When I drew this out, it was 13, but this is closer to 15% drop. So make sure to go back to the high tight flag workshop. It talks about these types of setups as being explosive. ALAB and VSAT were 2 high tight flags from a couple of weeks ago. There's going to be more high tight flags inside of this week's watch list, some that are on the verge of breaking out, others that are just forming, and then yet others that have already broken out. But you could see here 3 days ago, Ethereum broke out. It had a continuation on Saturday, and we're putting in an inside day on Sunday today. So another thing we look for is high volume on breakouts. That's exactly what we see here. Very, very important. Do you always have to have high volume on breakouts? No, but it helps. It helps give you that confirmation. What else? Right down here on the pullback to the 21 EMA, you saw RSI pulled right back down to 50. That's something that you want to look for. And then squeezes. Well, a squeeze fired back here. You could see the move that we got after the squeeze fired. And then you got a baby squeeze. We got a 3-dot squeeze right here into this tight range. And then boom, squeeze fired and moved to the upside. So that's pretty much it on Ethereum. Want to get through as many of these as I can. This is Link, very similar to Ethereum. It is a crypto name. And you can see a similar move, right? 85% move, 23% drop, Darvis box setup. Darvis box breakout yesterday, and not an inside day quite, but very close to be. This one dipped a little bit below 50 RSI. That will happen. And then look at the breakout followed by volume, and then no squeezes over here. But you did have that initial squeeze down here, right? Tight price action, and then boom, explosion to the upside. All right, let's take a look at Apple. This is a really nice one. You can see nice consolidation under 213 for about 5 months, 4 or 5 months. And then we had some news that came out on, I think it was Thursday, or maybe it was Wednesday. And yeah, had a nice price expansion through that resistance. And you can see the resistance right here, right? So you got a rejection here, you got a rejection here, you got a rejection there, you got a false breakout there, another rejection there, and then boom, you get the breakout right here. So really nice move on Apple. This one has been consolidating in time for, like I said, 4 or 5 months. And the longer, there's a saying that I like to use, the longer the base, the higher the space, meaning the longer it consolidates, the bigger the chance that you're going to, or the higher the chance you're going to get a bigger breakout. And that's exactly what we're seeing the start of here on Apple. For next week, what I'd want to look for, I personally did not take this trade, I missed it. But what I'd be watching for is maybe a back test of this trend line around 220, or even a deeper pullback around 213. We may get it. This may continue to move higher, maybe up to 240, and then something causes it to reverse down to 224, and then possibly back down to 213. 213 would be the area. Now, why am I going to target that? Because we got the breakout, but we didn't get the back test. And not to say you always need a back test after a breakout, but after a big breakout like this, I don't know what the percentages are, but